We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your estate, the mountain cabin and pickup truck. But what he didn't know was, I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only son, Daniel. His voice sounded strange, almost cold as he said, "Mom, we're flying to Asia tomorrow. Already sold your estate, the mountain cabin and pickup truck. We needed the money for our investment. Bye." And he hung up just like that. 45 years raising him, sacrificing for him, and he discarded me like garbage. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear son didn't know. Welcome back to Auntie Dorothy's Stories. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Your support truly encourages me to continue sharing these incredible tales with you. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from my sweethearts around the world. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 71 years old. And until that moment, I thought I knew my son. I had become a widow 6 months ago. My husband George had passed away from a heart attack while we were eating breakfast, just as we had done every morning for 45 years. That morning, he had served me coffee with cream and toast. As always, he had kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Daniel had been more present in my life, or so I believed. He came to visit 3 times a week. He helped me with the funeral arrangements and accompanied me to the grocery store. He even suggested I see a doctor for a general checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," he'd say with that smile I thought was love. But now I understood was for convenience. The mountain cabin had been our sanctuary for years. George and I bought it when Daniel was 15, with a lot of hard work and sacrifice. Every summer we'd go there, building memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Daniel would bring his boyfriends and later his husband Michael. I would cook for everyone, clean and do the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never thought he'd see it as just money. And the truck, that old Ford pickup truck, George cared for like his own child. He'd wash it every Sunday, change the oil religiously, and always park it in the same spot under the shade of the tree. Daniel knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last thing I had left of him. His scent still lingered on the seats. When he hung up, I stayed there on that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by other sick people. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something strange happened inside me, a calm I hadn't felt since George's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before he died, George had handed me a manila envelope. "Margaret, put this in the drawer of your dresser. If something happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I had put it away without much thought. After the funeral, with so much grief and so many arrangements, I simply forgot. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me to go into the office. The doctor examined me and said I was in good health for my age, that I just needed to rest more and eat better. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about that envelope, about the coldness in Daniel's voice, and how Michael was probably behind all of it. He had never liked me. He always saw me as a nuisance. I left the office and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Daniel. But as I waited, I couldn't help but smile. There was something poetic about all of this. My son thought he had left me with nothing. But what he didn't know was that George, my dear George, had always been a man who planned ahead. The bus arrived and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by. The houses, the stores, people rushing everywhere, all with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had my own too, and I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the manila envelope, exactly where I had left it. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up. I could feel there were several documents inside. George had written my name on the front in his neat handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was starting to get dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer scared me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if unwrapping a birthday gift. What I found inside would change everything. What I found in that envelope took my breath away. There were legal documents, deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from George. My eyes filled with tears as I read his familiar handwriting. My dear Margaret, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to protect you from worries. Over the years, I invested our savings in properties and businesses. We don't just have the mountain cabin. We have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Daniel and Michael live. We also have shares in 3 companies that are worth more than you can imagine. You are rich, my love. You always were rich, but now you are on paper too. My hands trembled as I looked through the documents. There were deeds to houses in different Denver neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small motel on the outskirts, and indeed the 20-story apartment building where my son lived. George had been the silent owner for the past 10 years, but had put everything in the name of a company I didn't know about. And according to the papers, I was the sole heir of that company. There were also bank statements for accounts I never knew existed with numbers that seemed unreal. George had been a bus driver for 40 years, but apparently he had also been a very smart investor. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, he had multiplied in silence, and I never knew anything. In the letter, George explained that he had kept it all a secret because he didn't want me to worry about money or for Daniel to know about our real financial situation. You know our son, Margaret. If he knew we had so much money, his attitude would change. I want him to love us for who we are, not what we have. What irony. Our son had abandoned us thinking we had nothing, when in reality, we had everything. If you're enjoying this story about family betrayal and hidden wealth, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked around the house, touching the old furniture and the knickknacks Daniel had always criticized for being outdated. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one where he was 5 years old, sitting on George's lap and laughing. Where did that sweet little boy go? When did he become so cold, so calculating? The next day, early in the morning, the phone rang. It was Daniel again. His voice sounded different, softer, but I had already learned to be wary of those shifts in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to tell you we already transferred the money from the estate. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yes, Mom. We obviously weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair, right? We need the money for our investment in Hong Kong. Michael has an incredible business opportunity over there. 30% of my own things. How generous. I see, honey. And when do you leave? This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more if the business goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs. Fits my needs, as if he knew what my needs were. Okay, Daniel, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. And he hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, and for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since George died. The situation was so absurd, it was comical. My son had robbed me, kicked me out of my own estate, talked to me with unbearable condescension, and all to fund an Asian adventure that would probably be a disaster. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was the ease with which he had discarded me. 45 years of my life dedicated to him, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, and he had erased me from his life with a 2-minute phone call. That was what truly hurt. I checked my bank account online. Sure enough, they had deposited an amount that probably seemed generous to them, but to me was a mockery. They had sold the mountain cabin for much less than it was worth, likely because they needed the cash quickly, and they had sold George's truck for a pittance. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Daniel and Michael load their suitcases into a cab. He was carrying 2 huge suitcases. Michael had a very expensive-looking carry-on bag. I watched them laugh, kiss, and make plans. They looked like 2 teenagers excited for an adventure. They never looked toward my window, never said goodbye. When the cab drove away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and George's documents spread out on the table. I had to make some decisions. I could call a lawyer, reclaim my properties, and get back everything they had taken. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more educational way. I called Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who had handled George's affairs. He had been at the funeral, had given me his condolences, and had told me to call if I ever needed anything. Well, now I needed him. "Mrs. Thompson, it's good to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm doing well, Mr. Harrison. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from George that I don't quite understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there." That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. I dreamed of George. He was sitting in his favorite chair reading the newspaper, just like every morning. And when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I had felt for so many months either. It was something like determination. For the first time since George's death, I had a clear purpose. I was going to get back what was mine, but not in the way Daniel expected. The next morning, I got dressed with more care than usual. I put on my burgundy dress, the one George always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair and put on a little makeup. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Mr. Harrison's office was downtown. It was an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. "Mrs. Thompson, this is much more than I imagined. George was a very smart man. Look, according to these papers, you are the owner of." "I know, Mr. Harrison. I've already reviewed them. What I need to know is what I can do legally." Mr. Harrison explained that everything was in order, that the documents were legitimate, and that I was the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I had already suspected. The sale of the mountain cabin was illegal because Daniel had no right to sell it. "We can get the cabin back immediately, Mrs. Thompson, and we can also proceed with legal action against your son for fraud." "No, Mr. Harrison. I don't want to proceed with legal action. I want to do this another way. I want everything to remain a secret for now. Can you help me?" He looked at me with curiosity, but he nodded. "Of course, you are my client. What do you need?" "I need you to discreetly get the mountain cabin back. Do what is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale, and I need you to help me gain real control of all my properties, especially the building where my son lives." "I understand. It will be a process that takes a few weeks, but it's completely feasible." "Perfect. And Mr. Harrison, I need no one to know I am behind all of this, at least for now." When I left his office, I felt as if I had woken up from a very long dream. I walked through the downtown streets watching the people, the buildings, the life that was going on as normal. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The following weeks were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow who had been abandoned by her son. But in secret, I was a wealthy woman silently orchestrating the recovery of my assets. Mr. Harrison worked efficiently, and every few days, he would call me with updates on the progress of the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house for the time being. It was mine, after all, although Daniel probably expected me to move into a single room. Every morning I would wake up, have breakfast at the same table where George and I had shared so many years, and then go for a walk in the neighborhood. The neighbors would greet me with that mix of pity and curiosity they reserved for recent widows. My neighbor Sarah came up to me one afternoon while I was watering the plants in the front. "Margaret, dear, is it true that Daniel went to Asia and left you all alone?" "Yes, Sarah, he went with Michael. They have business plans over there." "And how are you going to live, sweetie? We all know George didn't leave much money." "If you only knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you some food, help you with groceries." "You're very kind, but I'm fine, really." Sarah looked at me with that expression I knew well. It was the same look I had received after the funeral, compassion mixed with a little relief that it wasn't her tragedy. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." These conversations were constantly repeated. The butcher, the baker, the lady at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me with that soft tone they use with the unfortunate, and I would nod, smile, and thank them for their concern. But inside, a part of me enjoyed this performance. It was like living a double life. Mr. Harrison called me one Wednesday morning. "Mrs. Thompson, I have good news. I was able to nullify the sale of the mountain cabin. The buyers didn't know the sale was fraudulent, so they got their money back without any problems. The cabin is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Harrison. And the building where Daniel lives?" "That one is more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company, but we need to make some administrative changes so that you have direct control. That should take another 2 weeks." "Perfect. Keep me informed." After hanging up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Daniel. He had been in Asia for 3 weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from him. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. To him, I had ceased to exist the moment he got the money he needed. But I knew that was going to change soon. This story is getting intense. If you're wondering what happens when Daniel returns from Asia, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. What would you do if your own child betrayed you like this? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. 3 weeks after Daniel left, Sarah came running to my house with fresh neighborhood news. "Margaret, did you know that Michael is in trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works there told me they're investigating some loans he took out using the apartment they live in as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't his." "Really?" I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Yes, and it seems Daniel didn't know anything. They're saying he's going to have to come back from Asia to sort out this mess." What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part is apparently Michael lied to him about the business in Hong Kong. There was no business. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here. Perfect. Everything was working out exactly as I had expected. Daniel had trusted Michael, had sacrificed his relationship with me for him, and now he was discovering that he wasn't the man he thought he was. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked at the stars. George used to say that the stars were the souls of people who had lived a full life watching over their families from the sky. If that was true, then he was up there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. "Thank you, my love," I said to the sky. "Thank you for taking care of me even after your death." The next day, Mr. Harrison called me early. "Mrs. Thompson, I have some news. Your son just arrived in the country. He's at the airport alone." "Alone?" "Yes. Apparently, Michael stayed in Asia. There are rumors they had a very big fight." "I see. Did you send the letter?" "I'm going to send it today. He should receive it tomorrow." I hung up the phone and stood there in the kitchen, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation. After so many weeks of silent planning, the moment for the first real move had finally arrived. Daniel was about to discover that his mother was not the defenseless victim he believed. Daniel arrived at his apartment on Tuesday night. I knew this because Sarah, who seemed to have informants throughout the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. "Margaret, your son came back last night. I saw him go in with one suitcase, but he looked terrible. Pale, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he had been crying the whole flight. Alone, completely alone. And something strange, Margaret. When the doorman asked him for the keys, he didn't have them. He had to ask the superintendent to let him in with the emergency copy. Interesting. Michael had the keys, which meant he had probably decided not to come back. Or maybe Daniel had discovered something about him and had fled. In any case, my son was back, and very soon he would receive my little welcome gift." Mr. Harrison called me that same afternoon. "Mrs. Thompson, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your son received it in person." "Perfect. How long did we give him?" 30 days to vacate the apartment as per legal standards." "But Mrs. Thompson, are you sure you want to do this? He is your son after all." "Mr. Harrison, my son kicked me out of my own estate with a 2-minute phone call. He sold my things without asking. He treated me like garbage. Now he's going to learn that actions have consequences." "I understand. I just wanted to make sure you had considered all the implications." "I have considered them, Mr. Harrison. All of them." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake imagining Daniel's face when he read the letter. The initial confusion, then the disbelief, then the panic. He would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam him. But when he called to verify, he would discover that everything was completely legal. The next day, as if he had been waiting for my call, the phone rang at 8 in the morning. It was Daniel, and his voice sounded desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, honey. How was Asia? Mom, I don't have time for that right now. I received a very strange letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my apartment in 30 days. It must be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. It's called... Wait, let me find the letter. George Investments, Inc. Do you know this company? George had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, honey, I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to find out. Mom, I need you to help me. I don't know what to do. Michael left me in Tokyo. He ran off with another woman, and now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There was the confirmation. Michael had abandoned him. Probably when the money ran out or when he realized that the legal problems at home were more serious than he thought. Poor Daniel, he had sacrificed his family for a worthless man. I'm so sorry, honey. Where are you now? I'm in the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that he was left without the man for whom he had abandoned me, he remembered he had a mother. Of course, honey. Come over whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I put on my most conservative gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Daniel arrived, he would see exactly what he expected to see. A poor, vulnerable widow who had been abandoned by her own son. Daniel arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, I was surprised at how bad he looked. He had lost weight, had deep circles under his eyes, and his expensive clothes looked wrinkled and unkempt. His eyes were red from crying. Mom, he said, and for a moment I thought he was going to hug me, but he stopped as if he suddenly remembered how things had ended between us. Come in, honey. Do you want some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen at the same table where I had read George's documents weeks ago. Daniel looked small in that chair, lost, just like when he was a child and came to tell me about his school problems. Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's in the past, honey. No, it's not. I treated you badly. I said horrible things. His voice broke, and now I have no one. What happened with Michael? He left me with a 25-year-old hotel waitress in Tokyo. It turns out there was never any business in Asia. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape the debts he had here and use the money from the sale of your estate to fund his adventure. All the debts? Yes, Mom. So many debts. It seems he had been taking out loans for years, using the apartment we lived in as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't the owner of the apartment. How is that possible? Here was my opportunity. I don't know, honey. Property matters are very complicated. The problem is that now the banks are coming after me for his debts. They say since we were married, I'm also responsible. And on top of that, this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't have money. I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to live. He started to cry. Real tears of genuine desperation. And for a moment, my mother's heart softened. I wanted to hug him, console him, tell him everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in his voice when he called me from the doctor's office. The ease with which he had discarded me. The way he had talked to me as if I were a burden. Did you talk to a lawyer about the letter? I don't have money for a lawyer, Mom. We spent all the money in Asia. Michael took what little was left when he ran off with that woman. So what are you going to do? I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I find a job and can get a small place to live. There was the question I had been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own estate, after selling my things, after treating me like garbage, he now wanted me to rescue him. He wanted the poor widow he had created to save him from the consequences of his own actions. Of course, honey, this will always be your home. Daniel looked at me with surprise. as if he hadn't expected it to be so easy. "Really, Mom? After everything that happened?" "You are my son, Daniel. That will never change." He got up, and this time he hugged me. It was a desperate hug from someone drowning and clinging to the only thing they can find. I hugged him back too, but not with the unconditional love from before. Now there was calculation in my embrace. Strategy. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job soon. I won't be a burden." "Don't worry about that now. Rest, recover, and then we'll see what your options are." Daniel left that afternoon to get some things from his apartment. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how easy it had been. He had come to me exactly as I had planned, broken, desperate, with no options. And best of all, he suspected nothing. To him, I was still the poor abandoned mother who needed his compassion. But this was only the first part of my plan. Having him live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I was going to let him settle in, feel safe, and believe he had found a refuge in my house. And then, when he least expected it, I was going to teach him the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. That night, I called Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to do something else for me." "Tell me, Mrs. Thompson." "I want you to investigate Michael's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options I have to separate them from my son. That will take time, but it's feasible." "Perfect. And Mr. Harrison, I want you to keep this an absolute secret. No one can know I am behind this investigation." "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. May I ask what your final plan is?" "My plan, Mr. Harrison, is very simple. I'm going to save my son, but first he has to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom." When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine George had been saving for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd had a special occasion like this one. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I had all the good cards in my hand. Are you still with me? This story is about to take an even more dramatic turn. If you want to see how Margaret teaches her son the ultimate lesson about family and betrayal, hit subscribe now. And I have to ask, do you think Margaret is being too harsh, or is Daniel getting what he deserves? Tell me your opinion in the comments. Daniel moved into my house the next day with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box, all that remained of his luxury lifestyle. Watching him unpack in his childhood bedroom, I saw the humiliation in every movement. That evening, he found another envelope from George among Michael's abandoned papers. Inside was a key to a safety deposit box containing $200,000 worth of family jewels. Daniel immediately saw them as the solution to Michael's debts. He still hadn't learned. Over the following weeks, I watched my son transform. He sold most of the jewels, took a night cleaning job when no one else would hire him, and befriended Mrs. Patterson, a co-worker who taught him about dignity in honest work. "There are 2 types here," she told him, "those who never had opportunities and those who wasted them." "I wasted everything," Daniel admitted. After weeks of watching him struggle, Mr. Harrison called with news we could legally free Daniel from all Michael's debts. It was time for the truth. At the lawyer's office, Daniel discovered everything. Michael's fraud, my wealth, the properties, the building he lived in. His shock was complete. "You knew all this when I came back?" "Yes." "Why did you let me suffer?" "Because you needed to learn what you couldn't learn any other way. When you sold my estate, you didn't just take property, you took my dignity, my trust, my heart." Daniel wept with genuine understanding. Despite knowing about my wealth, he kept his cleaning job. "I need to remember who I became," he said. 6 months later, Daniel was studying social work, paying his own way. A letter arrived from Michael in French prison. Daniel threw it away unopened. That person doesn't exist anymore. We visited the mountain cabin together. Daniel touched every surface, remembering, "When I sold this, I felt nothing. Now I feel Dad everywhere." His proposal was perfect. "Let's turn this into a shelter for people escaping financial abuse. Dad built it with love. It should shelter others with love." That night, I spoke to George in silence. Our son finally understood. I felt his answer. "I always knew you would." George always said real wealth wasn't what you owned, but what you couldn't lose. Daniel finally understood. Love isn't inherited, it's earned. And redemption isn't given, it's worked for, one difficult day at a time. If this story touched your heart, Please subscribe and share it. What city are you listening from? What would you have done in Margaret's place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. With love and respect.